Okay, we're on air. Today is the 22nd of December 2020. The time is 6 o'clock and would like to begin our work session with public comment. Is there anyone that would like to make public comments? If so, you have 3 minutes. I don't see anyone unmuting, and so I'll call this public comment period closed, and we'll go into our work session. City Manager, do you want to introduce we don't need roll call because it's a work session.
Good evening, Council. Hope everybody's well. We wanted to take this opportunity tonight that presented itself to talk a little bit about your upcoming retreat. There are a couple of issues. First and foremost, we have a very different medium through which we're trying to conduct the retreat this year due to COVID. What we've been doing thus far this year, as you know, is we have some people on site, we have other people on Zoom, including members of the public, staff, and elected officials. So the medium is one question to address this evening. In addition, we have, excuse me, only one new member joining us in January when we swear in the newly elected officials. And so the content of the retreat is another topic I was hoping we could address tonight. As you know, we typically at the retreat will conduct some training for newly elected officials on just city policies, city procedures, council policies, council procedures. But it seems that training step may be less necessary this year with only one new member. Of course, that's Sharon Cumby. I have met with Mrs. Cumby a few weeks ago, provided all of our orientation materials to her and made them available to the other members of council also. She's received some advance information, and we've promised to get her any additional advance information she might need. So training is under content, the first order of business. As you know, the sort of second level of content that we cover in the retreat is targeted on sometimes some team building. Again, we use that more often when we have a new team to build or a significantly changed team. We certainly do have changes in our team coming in for 2021, but they're fairly small. And then the third element of content that we usually include is where you really roll up your sleeves and start doing the work of being elected officials and policymakers, and that is in goal setting and identifying your public policy objectives that you would like to come out of the retreat and ultimately adopt by resolution at a meeting, a regular meeting of the City Council. So I think that has covered the majority of the items I hope to address tonight. But as I kind of close out and ask for your input on those items, I wanted to offer this to you. I've been brainstorming a little bit to try to figure out how that goal setting or public policy part of your retreat, how staff might facilitate that or set it up in a way so it could be most effective in this new medium that we're operating in. What it sort of strikes me as I've watched us evolve into this over the last 7-8 months is that, you know, some of the elements of nonverbal communication really are lost in a wholly Zoom setting, and certainly in this hybrid setting that we've been in. And as a one-time communication major, if I remember right, I think the statistic is like 80% of all communication is nonverbal. so I think if that statistic from like 1990 is still true, then we're certainly losing a little bit of that. So I brainstormed a little bit with the city attorney and with the city clerk to figure out if there might be a way that we could use communication through electronic, or through email, maybe to help us into the brainstorming goal setting part of your retreat, so that when we do convene that retreat, maybe we've solicited all of your ideas for policy goals for 2021 and sort of pre-published them to you, so that you come into the retreat with those kind of already on the table and in the back of your minds. So anyway, we thought about ways that we might try to make the medium more effective, whether it's fully Zoom or this hybrid in-person and Zoom format. So I'll leave you with that. I don't need to go into the detail of how that might work. It'd be similar to what we do right now when we canvass you by email and say, hey, are you available on this day for a meeting? And you say yes or no. Or in this case, you would present your ideas to the group perhaps, or to the clerk or myself. Then we collate those into a single sheet for you to get back and know what's the totality of the public policy goals of all 9 members. And then when you come in to the retreat, hopefully we've gotten that step out of the way. So anyway, I'll be quiet now and take your ideas and input. Medium was the first question, and then under content we had, how much training do you want to do? How much, if any, team building? And third, for public policy and goal setting, would you like to abbreviate that by the process I just offered, or do you have other ideas?
Council, let's start with Councilor Harrington.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would say, I'm generally favorable to all of that, Janine. I think, the opportunity to have a slightly abridged version of the retreat is certainly a unique opportunity, and I think we would be foolish not to take it while we're with only one new member. That seems pretty fortunate. So I think depending on, I'm certainly not interested in attending in person. Just to put that out there, I would be attending via Zoom. And it is, I think, I do believe that you're right, that there is a lot, some loss of the nonverbal communication over Zoom, but I think it really falls off substantially when you have a hybrid situation. In chambers now, you have a reasonably decent way of seeing back and forth. I can see my colleagues on Zoom far better than I can see the people in person. So I think that version of a hybrid is not very successful, especially if you move outside of chambers to say the conference room at the rec center or something like that. That's even harder for those of us on Zoom, I think.
Thank you. Other councilors on any of those topics, the medium, training, goal setting, the method in which we will communicate. Councilor Schuster.
I vote for doing it in chambers and on Zoom, just like Councilor Harrington said, because any place else it's going to be, I feel, hard to set up what we have here already.
Right.
So I think that whatever we do, the Zoom, people want to be on Zoom, people want to be in chambers with our new plexiglass shields. We'll work through it.
Thank you. Councilor Doherty.
I noticed the legislature, it looked like they had their video on even though when they were in chambers. So that might be a way to get the Brady Bunch look where we can all see each other's faces, but then have in chambers have the microphones off on the computer and the speakers off on the computer. And that way we can all see each other. And, when I make a face at Brian, you can tell. You can't tell which direction I'm aiming in. But that might be a way so that we can all see each other. And also, I was really happy with our goals last time. And since COVID was kind of cutting things short, I wonder if we could just build on the goals that we have, look at what we have and see how we're going to tweak it, or people could send an email to our clerk if they have other ideas they want to try to get on this new plan. That's my suggestion. Thank you. I'll also be on Zoom for the meeting, I think.
Okay, thank you. Vice Mayor Gabriel.
Thank you, Mayor. Just curious, Janine, do you have any plans to bring anybody in as a facilitator, or will this be done by staff members only?
Vice Mayor Gabriel, that's a great question. I had not contacted the gentleman that we've used off and on through the years, who is typically readily available on short notice. I cannot confirm that he will be, though, and I didn't contact him because I wanted to have this conversation tonight. We usually bring him in largely for team building and some orientation on the role of council as policymakers versus staff as administrators. But if we're not going to do training to that regard, policy versus administration, or if we're not doing team building, then we could still use someone to just facilitate dialogue and discussion. But I'll be candid with you. I think if you just need facilitation, we can do that at a staff level if you're okay with that. But if you want to do team building or any kind of training, I'd probably bring in a third party. So I guess my answer, Pat, is it depends on what you tell me tonight.
Right.
Is that okay? All right.
Yes, sounds good.
Councillor Stalder.
Thank you, Mayor. I wonder, I mean, if what I'm interpreting correctly is we don't need to have a council retreat because a lot of our goals will probably still be in continuation from this year. I don't know if I'm the only one that's interpreting it that way. But I like the idea of being able to kind of communicate over email and not have an extra meeting. We talk about budget so much and we're all getting paid to be at the council retreat. If it's going to be awkward or, we're still finding ourselves in progress of last year's goals, maybe we could postpone and have the retreat in the summer when we have a better idea, or that's just my 2 cents. And hopefully no COVID yeah, right.
Thank you. Councillor Pierce.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I think I'd like to give Councillor Harrington the opportunity to maybe clarify his remarks, because what I heard him say and what Councillor Schuster said, I think are two different things. I mean, I heard Councillor Harrington say he was very supportive of 100% Zoom and that we potentially all should be on Zoom. And I think, and maybe I misheard, but I wonder, Brian, if you might want to jump in there and clarify those remarks.
Sure. Yeah. Thank you, Councillor Pierce. I think I probably didn't give a very clear position on that. So thanks for the opportunity, I suppose. I do find it challenging to read the body language of, or to sort of even understand the body language of the council members in person when we have this hybrid version. So Councilor O'Doherty's point to the way the legislature is doing it, where the people in person are still sitting in front of a computer screen, broadcast into the Brady Bunch view. That is, that's helpful. At that point, I would wonder what the point of being there in person is personally, but that's not, I guess, my decision. So, I mean, my opinion just very clearly is that we should all be on Zoom.
Councillor Schuster, did you want to?
No.
Okay, your position.
No, I'm fine with that. Things are going halfway smooth now. People get recognized. People are able to talk. As things change this year, people may more show up with our enhanced plexiglass things, or maybe not. It's up to the general person on what they would like to do.
Okay. Now, would you give direction to our city manager on whether or not you want the retreat facilitated, or would you prefer to have it staff directed? Counselor Schuster.
I'm fine with staff. We have some great people on staff. I'm fine with them leading us and talking about different goals that we would like to see for the city and they would like to see for the city, because they are people too.
Counselor Weaver.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't think we need to bring in a facilitator for what I think is going to be an unusual and somewhat modified version of the retreat. I think it probably would be beneficial for the council to have the meeting in some form. I don't think it's going to look like it usually does. I'm not certain it needs to be 2 days or split up between 2 days. I think a review of the previous goals with our incoming members, both new and returning, is useful. It gets everybody back into some familiarity with where we're at, probably some discussion about how we'll be transitioning into the middle of the year, and an update on those goals, perhaps even a postponement, modification, or combining of those goals that exist now might be useful. And I don't really know that we really have time to do that at any other point during the year. You know, I find myself somewhat interested in what Councilor Stalder was saying, but then as I'm thinking about it, that's really the only time during the year where we don't have things coming at us in a way that we need to pay attention to. And the budget comes up very quickly at the beginning of the new year each year, and the staff has to spend a great deal of time preparing that. So what I'd like to see us do with this retreat meeting, if there's support and agreement with this, is that review with the incoming folks and ourselves, and then see possibly if there's some areas where we can say, you know, these two things probably could be folded into each other, or even, and I hope this isn't the case with a lot of them, but perhaps postponed or removed, given the reality that we're living in and going to be dealing with. So I don't know that we need facilitation for that outside of the staff. I appreciate and agree with those comments about our staff as well. I think if there are citizen components of input for goals that they'd like to take us to take a look at, I think we can do what we always do and just make sure that to the extent we can take that in and let folks know that it's a good time to raise some ideas to us if they want to do that. On the other hand, I think we're going to be in a very limited period for what city government can take on beyond what we're already trying to do and what we already need to deal with. Hope that makes sense to everybody, but those are my feelings. That's where I'm at with it.
Councilor Doherty.
Yeah, I would like to see us shorten it to 1 day instead of the 2 meeting times to kind of balance that, where we don't need as much time as before, especially if everybody else is in agreement that we could just review what we have and get the input from our new members. And if we ask the public to send emails, then if our staff can compile that, we could do that in one of those sessions instead of having the 2 as we originally scheduled. That would be my preference. Thank you.
Councilor Pierce. Thank you, Councilor Doherty.
Thank you, Mayor. I like the idea of 2 days, only shorter, a couple, 3 hours each day. And the reason I like that idea is I like to have the discussion related to goals, and then I like to kind of sleep on it and mull it over and come back to it the next day after I've had some time to think about it, which is maybe just my process. But if we could somehow, as Janine was mentioning earlier, somehow compile that information ahead of time and get us that information ahead of time, and I could do my mulling or whatever you want to call it, previous to the retreat, then 1 day would be fine. But I don't want to on a Friday night to be reminded of all the goals. And then by the end of the Friday evening, have to think about what we're going to squish together or, potentially attempt to eliminate or somehow reconfigure. Because I think that's just too short a time for me personally, but I'm one of 9, so I can certainly adjust. I've got a couple other comments. The other comment I'd like to make is having to do with the polling function on Zoom, and I'm really asking perhaps if Bob Southard could potentially take a look at that and see if we could use the polling function of Zoom, not necessarily as a vote, but as, especially when we go through the retreat process, if we could use that in some way. It might be a vote, I don't know, but I'd certainly like to have him look at that. The other comment I'd like to make is our city clerk is able, I just learned tonight, she's able to run this entire meeting, not in council chambers. So I think it would just behoove us to really think about all of this moving to an 100% Zoom platform. And I think Councilor Harrington is absolutely right in that I am very able to see all my colleagues on Zoom very easily, in the Tiles or the Brady Bunch look, but our council members in chambers can't see at all. Right now, I see nobody other than the folks or the names that are on Zoom, and that's a huge barrier from my perspective. So I guess that's all my comment. Oh, and in terms of the retreat, I certainly don't think we need to hire a facilitator to come in. Sharon's pretty quick, and Sharon Cumby, she's quick. She'll catch on really, really quickly. So I wouldn't worry so much about her, lagging behind or having a bucket load of questions. I think she'll be right on step very quickly. So was there anything else we need to answer, Mayor? Did I cover all the bases?
Covering the items that our city manager brought up.
Okay.
But I wanted to hear also from Council-elect Summerville. You're muted, but if you'd unmute, we want to hear from you, because we're trying to determine what format would work best for not only the existing current returning members, but also for you and Sharon Cumby. I don't think Sharon is on the Zoom call, but you are, so I see you've unmuted. Council-elect Summerville, would you go ahead?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Appreciate the opportunity to give some input into this. So just kind of covering what the city manager has. I've met with the city manager and our city attorney. I would defer to council member-elect Cumby on any training she might need, but I think that could probably be taken care of outside of the retreat, certainly given the circumstances that we're dealing with, and I think it would be a better use of the council's time. I also agree on the facilitator. I think given kind of the direction the meeting seems to be going, it would make sense to just let city staff do that. On the format of the meeting, as an observer of the council meetings, kind of lurking in the background, as I'll put it, for the summer and the fall and through now, I will tell you very honestly, and having attended a number of the legislative meetings over the course of this year, the in-person, the hybrid meetings are very disjointed for the viewers. It's hard to kind of get an idea of what's going on because we seem to have two dueling meetings, one inside the chambers and one on Zoom. And just as an observer, it's hard to track. It's kind of hard to follow. So given the circumstances, I think it's appropriate that the entire retreat is on Zoom. I also think from a personal standpoint, it's important to offer that to our city staff and not ask them to come into council chambers. If we have the technology to do this remotely, I think that we should go ahead and do that and periodically review that in the future for other meetings as COVID develops. On the goals, given the situation, I very much agree that we should start with what the current council has. To me, there seems like quite a few of them, so I'm supportive of trying to maybe prioritize and rein some of those in just a little bit. Again, given the situation with COVID, given that that will probably continue to be a large focus for the council for some time to come. So I, as a new council member, I don't have any intention of bringing any new goals. I'd like to work with what the council already has. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councilor Stalder, is that your hand coming up, or do we have a wannabe? All right.
I'm sorry, I'm like the queen of like Zoom video bombs all the time. I'm sorry about that. At least they're cute.
That's for sure. Thank you. All right, let me go to our city manager. City manager, do you feel like you're getting a sense of what the council is anticipating, or their preference for a retreat?
Mayor, I do. I have some follow-up questions, if that'd be okay.
You bet.
So I made some notes here. Let me go down the list. So first of all, for all of you, especially those who haven't been into chambers recently, you might want to stop in. And I'm not trying to encourage one type of medium for the medium over another, a medium for the meeting over another. But I will say everybody has their own respective fishbowl in chambers at this point in time, and we are exceptionally COVID friendly. Of course, we made these changes to chambers for the elected officials as well as for staff and for members of the public. But I also want to make sure that you're aware that these changes will facilitate the operations of your municipal court too. So if you don't use them, you should not feel obliged to, but I just want to make sure that you know, stop in and check it out if you want to see what it's like, but it's remarkably different and very COVID friendly. Okay, so got that off the table. Let's see. I forgot to mention one thing, and that is that Nancy and I discussed last week the possibility of using Zoom small group breakouts, which we've not used in this forum, as you know, but is fairly common and becoming more common as the world learns how to effectively video conference meetings. Nancy has not had sufficient time yet to know how that might work for us, and we have not had sufficient time to figure out if it does work, how would the city attorney prefer we conduct that so that we maintain an open meeting throughout. But there's the possibility of that. And the reason that's important, when we do goal setting, as you know, we often will create like categories of public policy goals, and then we'll do breakouts of small groups to sort of debate or rank minor goals under the broader category. So we're looking into that. I just don't know how feasible it would be technically and then also legally. So that's out there. Let's see, other notes. The clerk also asked me to clarify. She was concerned that there might be any perception amongst you or the public that we would be conducting a meeting by email. That's not the intention. We would use email to, this is what I'm thinking, I'll circulate my year-end goal report. So you'll see the goals for 2020 and where we landed effective December 31st or the end of this month. Circulate that to you. So you'll see the slate of goals for the year and a status report on each. And then we would be asking you to submit back any new or different goals from that list, and maybe tell us what your priority would be for existing goals, as I'm hearing you talk about the need for many of our existing goals to maybe carry forward. So we kind of conduct a survey. All of that email, if we do this, would be public record. We'd be sure to include that in the note to you. So that if it were requested by the public, they would have it, but then we would collate it into some single spreadsheet or whatnot so you could see which goals had the highest preference for being continued from 2020 to 21 and what, if any, new goals were being proposed and by which member. So you'd have that going into the retreat. So that gets me to, I think, what Councillor Pierce said. If we did that effectively, and had a goal, or excuse me, a deadline of you all responding to that by maybe January 11th, end of business. That's the Monday prior to your weekend retreat. If we could circulate that back to you, you would get your response to me by January 11th. We would get that out to you the next day. And then you'd have really 5 days to mull on it. I think that was Jane's word. Would that enable a one-day retreat in your mind, or would you still like to have a 2-day? Does that make sense? I know I was kind of all over the place in describing that, but you would receive 4 days prior to your retreat on Friday a list of everybody's preference for continuing each existing goal forward or not, and a list of any new goals that any member would like to put on the table for consideration on Friday. So you'd have 4 days to mull it. So think about that, and I'll come back and seek some direction there.
Councilor Pierce, go ahead.
Yeah, I like that. That sounds really reasonable to me. Thank you.
Councilor Harrington.
Just giving a thumbs up, saying I agree with Councilor Pierce. I think 1 day would be fine with that sort of mulling time, as it were.
I agree.
Okay. We have our junior council member helping out.
I think there's some wisdom there. I should call.
That's right. That's right.
All right, anyone else with comments, new thoughts? Do you feel like that we're getting close to where we want to be with the pre-planning and then the one-day format without facilitation? I see some nodding.
May I say something?
Yes, go ahead.
I'm concerned about the breakout room idea. Well, for one thing, when we broke out into groups last time, I do have FOMO, fear of missing out. And so I'm interested in all the topics. So when we break out into, then you're like, well, I didn't get any input on that one. So I'd just as soon be together. And the breakout rooms concern me from a legal standpoint, because it would be really hard to track those and post all the breakout rooms. So I think it would be easier and more transparent to just be all in one room. Thank you.
Okay. Councilor Weaver.
Thank you, Mayor. Something else that's worth keeping in mind, I think, Councilor Stalder mentioned this earlier, is that we might be able to, given that it sounds like we've reached consensus for this to be a singular session, despite some of the points raised, good points, I think, raised by Councilor Pierce, we may be able to think about having a mid-year or something to that effect, revisiting where we have a more traditional meeting for this retreat, hopefully together in person, that members of the public could attend, however they wanted to. I think that's a realistic possibility in the medium term, especially given that I think we're wisely coalescing around the idea that we're not going to be introducing a lot of new things for this review meeting. So we can keep that in mind. I think Councilor Doherty's concerns about the breakout rooms are reasonable. I think it would be great if we could utilize those, but I have some similar concerns to her regarding the tracking of that. I'm not as worried about the FOMO, but I think that some of the other concerns are, if not functionally a problem, perception-wise, that could be a problem, and not just for the members of the public, but for all of us. Like, I wanted to talk to that group of counselors about that topic as well, or whatever. So we might steer away from that and just make sure that the full group of us has enough time to provide input to and for each other on the topics that we review. So I wanted to throw in my 2 cents on that. And I also want to share that I agree that probably settling on one format as opposed to hybrid meetings might be a good plan. And it might be beneficial for us to settle that issue at some point in the near future. That's all I'd add for right now.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Pierce?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I think the breakout rooms are great in academia. Unfortunately, for public records in stuff like that, I think it poses a pretty big barrier. So it's unfortunate we probably won't be able to use. I mean, unless Bob comes up with something different than what I'm thinking. But yeah, that's it. That's all I have in terms of the breakout rooms.
While you people are mulling all that over, on the legal side, I think we can only do breakout rooms via Zoom. I don't know if we could. I mean, when we do them in person, it's perfectly fine because a member of the public or the reporters who attend can wander around, right, to every little group. Listen in for a little bit and move on after 3 minutes. I don't know that we can pull that off. And so I'd have to see more about the technology. While you're thinking about that, your earlier question about the polling, I have no idea about the polling function. I can look into it. That doesn't bother me because you're not making formal decisions, but there needs to be, it's just fine for, as you do in all work sessions, saying, well, it looks like, 7 or 8 of us like this, but you're not making a decision. You'll only do that later in an open meeting. So I can look at the technology of polling because it's a lot faster way to get the sense of council, and you do it all the time already in work sessions.
City Manager, anything you wanted to add to our city attorney's thoughts?
No, I think that answers it. So what I'm hearing, I'll just tell you what my takeaways are, and if anyone is in disagreement, then maybe they can speak up afterward. So as to the medium, at this point, it appears it will probably be offered as a hybrid medium unless we receive direction from the council otherwise. We also, as to the medium, will not pursue small breakout work groups based on the concerns I'm hearing unless the council determines they'd like us to explore that further. For content, I'm hearing that we do not believe we need to do any training or orientation session as a part of this retreat. I'm hearing that we do not believe we need to do any kind of team building as a part of this retreat. And lastly, I'm hearing that obviously we do want to review the goals from 2020, receive a status report of those, and then have an opportunity to comment by January 11th on which goals each individual member might like to carry forward, and also which new goals every individual member might like to have considered. The city attorney will explore with us the Zoom polling function. Nancy and I, looking at it from a functional standpoint, is it able to be done? And the city attorney determining more clearly if voting by the public, not council members, but if voting by the public or polling by the public is something that we can accomplish. Staff will facilitate the goal-setting session, and we will also survey you as to whether you prefer the one-day meeting that I hear your preference for here to occur on Friday evening, probably 5 to 9 p.m. on the 15th, Friday, or Saturday on the 16th from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. Okay, that's my takeaways.
Okay, Councilor Harrington.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Janine, I think the only thing I would add to that, I think you nailed it, but I think the only other piece would be if there are council members who wish to continue attending in person, finding a way that we can see their faces consistently would be helpful. So whether that be like a muted computer sitting in front of them, or what the case may be, I would find that helpful for this process.
Thank you, Councillor Harrington. And we have talked about this a little bit at a staff level. We refer to it as pinning council members attending by Zoom at the top of the screen or something like that. So I know Nancy and I talked about it last week. Not sure what progress, if any, she's made on that yet, but we'll continue looking at it.
Thank you. Yeah, I just want to be sure that I can see, being able to see the mayor, Councilor Schuster, those sort of things are, and the vice mayor, that would be helpful.
Great.
From
And
where I'm sitting.
Thank you, Mayor. I do see the clerk wanting to weigh in, so she's welcome to take my time.
Okay, let's go to the city clerk. After that, Vice Mayor Gabriel has comments. City clerk, Nancy, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. I was just going to point out that we have a council laptop for all council members. So if you plan to attend in person, if you could just plan to bring your laptop with you, we'll go ahead and get you set up in chambers so we can do as has been mentioned in the meeting and have your video playing, but have you muted as well.
Good.
Mr. Mayor, did you see that Sharon Cumby has joined us?
Good. Welcome, Sharon. Also, Sharon, as you know, we're talking about the council retreat. If there's any ideas, thoughts, or comments that you have regarding this, you can unmute and join us, as has Councilor-elect Summerville. So if you want to unmute and join us, I'll call on you as they do with the other council members, whether you're elected or returning.
Mr. Mayor, do you want to fill in Councilor Cumby about where we're sitting right now, what this discussion of the...
Okay, I don't know if I'll give you a perfect summary, but I'll give it a try. Councilor Cumby, what we have determined right now is that the council is going to attempt to prepare for the council retreat by having a opportunity to report on goals that they want to continue or that they want to revise, so that we have a chance to get some of the preliminary work out of the way. We will not have facilitation at this time for the retreat. We will have the format where it will be some in council chambers, some on Zoom. Hopefully those in council chambers will use their laptops so that you can see everybody as, I think, who was it said the Brady Bunch, so you see all the faces and you can see the grimaces. Well, the ones in council chambers, you can't see those, but because of the masks. And then also, we are going to forego orientation in this retreat, and so there will not be training as such. You'll receive that prior to the retreat by the staff. All of the information that will be brought to us through our city attorney, our city manager, our city clerk, and also through staff that they invite to keep us up to date. And what did I miss, council? The retreat format.
No breakout. Cool.
There will not be breakout groups, in the sense that all of the discussion is something that each individual would like to be privy to, and so they will try to make sure that we set aside time for each different topic so that we can all participate.
Support or non-support on the computer? Thought we talked about that a little bit.
Right, on the computer, Councilor Schuster, are you talking on the support? What we're going to try to do is have everyone turn on their computer so that the camera will be putting our faces up on the screen, so we'll all be looking at each other at the same time.
I thought they were talking about a column, or a icon you could hit that I support this or I don't support this.
Okay. Councilor Pierce, that was your topic. Is that what you want to do, to where as we go along, that there would be indications of support or non-support?
In terms of the polling?
Yeah, polling has to do not with the council, but it has to do with
I
other.
thought they were talking council too. I heard it also on
Okay.
viewers, but I thought they were talking about it on council too.
Okay, Councilor Pierce, do you want to clarify what your intent is on polling for those that are participating as council members?
Right. So Zoom has a polling function. And that means that those of us on Zoom could actually put or register our preference on a given topic, and then staff and ourselves would be able to see the preference of those that were being polled.
Okay.
So that's basically what it is. Just like Zoom has a breakout session function, it has a polling function as well.
All right, and again, this is something our city attorney will need to review, because we cannot vote during work sessions. And normally what we're trying to do is also give each individual the opportunity to make their decision on support or non-support up until the time that they cast their vote. So that's something that we're going to have to look into as far as the council polling. But, as far as other polling, we already received that many times in emails, phone calls, and comments from the public and as such. Now, also, I just want to mention this. We have on the screen, Brett Glass has his hand up. He wants to participate. You will get a chance to. Right now, we're working with the council and the council-elect. But we'll get to you. So just keep your hand up, Mr. Glass, and we'll get to you in a moment. Okay, council, the things that we've talked about, are you feeling comfortable with the direction that we're going right now for the retreat? Are there items that you want to discuss further, or to bring up to make this more to your liking? All right, let's go to Mr. Glass then. Mr. Glass, go ahead. You're still muted. Go ahead.
Honorable Mayor Shumway and members of council, the purpose of tonight's meeting is to plan your yearly goal-setting retreat, and while I will not be joining you as a member of council, I've delved into council's world as a result of the possibility that I might, and I therefore thought I'd stop by to share what I've observed and propose 3 goals for you to consider, including in your revised list of goals during that event. The first goal I hope you'll set is to please resolve to refrain from excessive regulation that might torpedo a recovery from the COVID-19 pandemic or harm future economic development. I've seen a troubling tendency toward this in the past months, and it's very, very concerning. Laramie residents and businesses are stressed right now, and the last thing we need is new regulation, new restrictions, or new licensing requirements. So please make it an official goal on your list to ensure that Laramie soars out of this crisis this summer as we are vaccinated and we're not weighed down by needless burdens as we do so. Secondly, I'd like to ask that as the city board of directors, you resolve to be more diligent bosses and managers than some past councils have been. You're the only body that stands between the public and an uncaring autocratic bureaucracy, so please take this duty very seriously. Council should resolve this year to insist upon truthfulness from its employees. You should make lying to you, attempting to manipulate you, or withholding important information from you a firing offense, which is what I think it really should be. And finally, as a third goal, I hope you resolve to prioritize input from the public. Please be skeptical of the input of lobbyists and lobbying groups, and also of members of city staff who are engaging in empire building rather than necessarily pursuing the public interest. While you shouldn't reject the ideas of these people out of hand, you should always consider their vested interests as you deliberate, and please resolve to give the public equal time. Don't let the staff and the lobbyists speak for hours while limiting the members of the public to 1 3-minute slice and not affording them an opportunity to respond to the other comments. That isn't fair or conducive to good government, and I think it's an important goal to consider setting. Well, with all of that, I'd like to wish you all a safe, happy, healthy, and prosperous holiday season in the new year, and that's all I have to say. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Glass. Anyone else in the public that would like to make comments regarding our plans for a retreat? All right, I don't see any. Council, let's go back to you. Councilor Pierce?
You know, for a moment there, Counselor-elect Cumby did unmute herself. So maybe,
Let's hear from Councilor.
maybe she has a comment.
Yeah, you're unmuted again. Go ahead.
Honorable Mayor, this is Sharon Cumby. And I just want to say that I'm in agreement of our meeting for the retreat via Zoom as we're steadily rising in infection numbers. And until we have a better idea about this new strain that is much more contagious, whether that's a consideration in a month from now, it very well may be. I think it would be the safest thing for us to do. And Jane, Councilwoman Pierce, I, in a number of meetings, have used the polling function on Zoom for voting. And after once or twice, once you get used to it, it is extremely efficient manner to take votes during a Zoom meeting. So I appreciate all the work everyone's done to organize and put this together, and I look forward to working with you all.
Thank you, Sharon. Welcome.
Thank you very much.
All right, Council, this is your chance to make final comments on this topic before we go to the rest of our agenda. City Manager, you're okay with the input that you received? Okay.
Yes, I am. Thank you very much.
Council, let's do some updates. We'll start with Councilor Pierce, and I'll just go across. So Councilor Pierce, updates on your committees?
I'm good, Mayor. I do have comments, so when you're ready, I've got a few.
And then Councilor O'Doherty?
Just wanted to ask people to join me in wishing Sam Burkett good health. He fell from his chair and had to have surgery, so he's down in Denver, and the surgery went well. If you all remember Sam, he's come to a lot of our meetings, and he's on the Laramie Advisory Commission for Disabilities, and he's a really great guy, and he got through the surgery, so I just hope that you'll all join me in wishing him well.
Thank you for that reminder. Councilor Harrington.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Certainly wish Sam well and a speedy recovery. For updates, I think the only notable update would be from the Laramie Main Street Alliance, who has launched a program as of yesterday in cooperation with the United Way of Albany County to provide payroll assistance to basically every eatery. So coffee shop, bar, restaurant, brewery, everything where you're consuming food in the downtown district if they apply. So those grants are for $1,500 and they're to be used for payroll with the intention of keeping folks open and employing folks. So the other notable thing at the Main Street Alliance is the Cowboy Cash program that they have been working through with the University of Wyoming. Has so far brought in $36,950. Basically, that program was the University of Wyoming giving $10 gift certificates to all of their students to be spent downtown. So great example of sort of the town and gown cooperation, and I think it's a significant benefit for our downtown businesses, and should not be missed. I won't name all the businesses, but several local businesses contributed significantly to the United Way Fund to support these local businesses, and there's an intention for in Q1 to sort of launch a similar program for service and retail businesses after they're sort of through the holiday season where they generally have more business, assuming Q1 will be more difficult for them. That's all I have.
Councilor Weaver?
I don't have any updates for the council, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, though.
Councilor Stalder?
I do not have any updates. Thank you.
Councilor Schuster?
Yes, Planning Commission had a meeting. We only had one item on the agenda for a slightly oversized garage, and it was approved. Historical Railroad Depot is meeting, and they're just trying to see what COVID's going to do to them. And that's all the updates I have.
Vice Mayor Gabriel?
Thank you. I attended the Albany County Tourism Board via Zoom yesterday. It's been noted that they have reduced their budget by 36% in their fiscal year ending June of 21, and because of that 36% reduction, they are fiscally sound. They're holding on and doing a pretty good job. It was noted too that November was the highest bed tax they have received since COVID started. They're not quite sure the reason behind that, but they're moving along. I had some grant money that they spent by the end of December, and they're hoping for a better 21. That's it.
Okay, now we're back to Councilor Pierce for council comments.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. My comment has to do with what Councilor Weaver mentioned about, and what Councilor Stalder mentioned about potentially meeting later on this year in the late spring after we do budget. And I think that makes some good sense. You know, at least now I think it's something we need to kind of think about, because our situation may be a whole lot different, and we may come to realize all that during the budget process and may need to kind of wrap our heads around different things. So certainly supportive of revisiting that topic after and during our budget process, which will be starting surprisingly really, really soon. So, and then my other comment has to do with, transitioning to 100% Zoom meetings. And when I say 100%, I mean 100% of the city council and staff, as well as our citizens who want to talk in terms of Zoom meetings. I'm really supportive of that idea. Councilor Cumby, soon to be Councilor Cumby, hinted pretty seriously on the potential new strain that could be or is here. So I think it's worth consideration, especially in our attempt to safeguard our staff. So that's my comment. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Doherty.
Sorry, I couldn't find my cursor. I just want to comment that I get upset when I hear our staff called names because I know that their agenda is making our city safer. Today, I saw workers flushing a water line. It's cold. They're out there in the 60-mile-an-hour wind doing work for our city, and I've seen that professionalism among our staff, and I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Harrington.
No comments, Mr. Mayor.
Councilor Weaver.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I agree with those comments from Councilor Doherty regarding our staff folks. And I would say that in terms of things that the city might be looking at for next year, all input is welcome and it will be considered in turn. I fully agree with this concept that the council needs to begin to make itself comfortable with adjusting towards meeting via teleconference exclusively until we have seen the end of this public health situation, which I think is very much in sight. I think it has been somewhat disjointed and suboptimal to have some members in the chamber and some members on Zoom over these many months as we have. I think it's been suboptimal for all of us. It's not a criticism that I'm directing towards any members specifically. I mean, we just did what we thought was best in the situation, but I agree with those comments that finding a format and sticking to it for the body is a good idea. When we have legislative committees, when we have the 5 state executive officials and other governing bodies able to do that, it seems to me that the city council might consider doing that as well. And I also, Mr. Mayor, want to give you a double thumbs up and tip of the hat for your leadership and your service in that chair over these last 2 years. It has not been an ideal time. And there have been many times when I have been glad that it was you and not me, but more specifically you in that chair. And I want to just thank you very much for your service to this city council. There will be a more formal presentation of this, I know, but I want to take these moments here that are less formal on our work session to just say thank you very, very much. It's going to be strange for me to be on a city council that does not include Joe Shumway, but we will we'll do our best and think of you. Try to make good decisions and be patient with each other and with everything else we have to do, because I think that's one thing that you have modeled very well for this council for many years and as mayor, and I thank you for that.
Well, it's been an honor. Thank you for those comments. I appreciate that. Councilor Stalder.
I have no comments. Thank you.
Councilor Schuster.
Last Saturday, we put out wreaths on veterans' graves. I took 10 veterans from Wyotech, and they helped me. We had it done very quickly. The wreaths will be picked up later in a ceremony, and the wreaths will be saved and then disposed of or burned at the same time that they have any damaged American flags will be burned on Flag Day. So that, and have no other comments. I enjoyed being here in council chambers. I realize there's only a few of us. With the new protection, our bubbles we have in here, I feel it's adequate. I will turn on my computer so that my face is up there like the Brady Bunch is, as Councilor Pierce said. So I will do that if that helps people on this. Thank you.
You're there. Thank you. Vice Mayor Gabriel.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to give a shout out to a story in the Boomerang among many that I saw on Sunday, written by Marissa Taylor about Shop with a Cop. 28 children hosted by Walmart. Officers from all brands of law enforcement in Albany County taking part, including the Wyoming Highway Patrol Foundation. They donated a sizable amount, as did Walmart. A number of people from the city took part, including Assistant Chief Terry, Officer Troy Glick, Officer Woods, Officer McLaughlin, Kevin Lundahl, and it was really a nice story to read, and it was really uplifting. Also wanted to mention that some council members were asked to take part in a holiday lighting contest, and 58 residents were involved. Jackie Grimes and her team put this all together, and we went out, some of us 2 or 3 nights, and took a look at holiday lighting that really brought a lot of joy to my and my daughter's face anyway. And the neat thing about it was the fact that I went to a lot of different places that I don't normally drive to. So that was really nice to get around the city, and it was just an amazing sight to see so many people decorating during the holiday season. So that was really uplifting. And a particular shout out, they weren't involved with the Wyoming Territorial Park. They did a fabulous job that everybody should go out and see. So Jackie Grimes and her team put together an outstanding list, and thanks to her, and thanks for the opportunity to see these wonderful lights around the city.
Tell them about the categories. The different prizes, the categories.
That's right, we had 5 different categories, I think.
There was. There's
Mayor-
Griswold, and the Griswold was the one where there's so many lights that it's gonna break the shut off the power because of the, and then the next one was the Hallmark, which is, just a beautiful setting. And then there was one that was called the Elf, one for the condos and the trailers and things like that. Then there was one that had, where there was, it was, and I can't remember the title of it, but it had nothing to do with Christmas, but it had to do with the holiday season. Nothing, to do with a Christian type presentation. So that was one. And then there was a 5th one. Help me with the 5th one.
Music and animation.
Buddy Elf.
Interaction. Yeah, where they had music and there were just so many people in this community that brightened up their neighborhood and brightened up the community. Great participation. I don't know that, of course, when you drive around and you look at these examples, you think this is just, everyone's doing it, but there was just so many people that had stuff. I remember driving by some thinking, boy, I wish they would have entered this. They would have been in the category. So each of those 5 categories had 5 1st through 5th, and then I think they take the average for those that participated. It was the council, and I think also Jackie Grimes had her son participating. I haven't heard the results. They'll be published. And again, this is another way which we as a council can interact with the community in a very positive way. We've had several opportunities to do that, and it's always uplifting and fun for us to do. I appreciate also Councilor Schuster didn't mention this, but a lot of the contributions that went to, and the work that went to these wreaths at Green Hill Cemetery has to do with him and his interaction with the VFW and also Wildtech and others that do that. I do know this, there's so many people on the council that are involved in community things. I show up and I see Councilor Doherty at this activity or next. I'm always hearing comments from councils that call back and say, how did this go or how did that go? I think we have made positive steps this year. This is my comment, positive steps in being a part of the community and being servants as elected officials. And so I appreciate serving with this council. It's been a joy, it's been an honor, and I appreciate that. Now, we don't have an agenda. We're going to be having an agenda review with the Vice Mayor, and I will do that on the 29th, I believe it is. And so there will be no agenda review tonight because we simply have not gone over the agenda for the first meeting that we have in December. But January 2021. We're glad to have 2020 and all its problems in the rearview mirror. Now, we still have public comment period, so let's go to the public. Anyone that would like to speak, you're welcome to take 3 minutes at this time and give us your thoughts. I don't see anything, so we'll close this public comment period. And with that, this meeting is adjourned. Have a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year.